There's actually been a lot of work, although I would say it might not look like it if I showed you two pictures side by side. It doesn't, it looks like we're just moving a small amount of dirt. But when you look at pictures like this, that little bird, 34 feet tall. Wow. Right? This reservoir, 2 miles, 3 miles. Huge. There's a lot of work, a lot of construction. The South Florida Water Management District is working on the STA at the same time, side by side with the reservoir. I actually don't have a picture of their construction, I forgot to include it. But our completion for this reservoir is anticipated to be done by March of 2021. We're actually a little bit ahead of schedule on that right now, but I'm not going to make any promises that we get done before March of 2021. And the Water Management District's STA was originally on schedule, then it fell behind schedule. They had some trouble with one of their contractors. They fired that contractor, got a new contractor, and now they are not only back on schedule, they are back ahead of schedule, and they anticipate some of those STA cells coming online as early as November of this year, with completion next summer of the stormwater treatment area. And we did modify this project about 1.5 years ago in order to allow water from those intake canals that I showed you on the first slide to be able to hydrate the stormwater treatment cells as soon as they were complete. So as soon as stormwater treatment cells are complete, which will be complete ahead of the reservoir, we'll be able to move water from the canals into the stormwater treatment area and start achieving benefits early on this project. The C43 reservoir is a similar reservoir to the C44 reservoir, but on the Caloosahatchee side. The South Florida Water Management District is doing the construction of that reservoir, and it is also under construction, although I did not include construction pictures, but if you've seen any of their updates at the Water Management District governing boards, they always give excellent updates on the project progress of that construction project. SEP. Everyone needs to know about SEP. This is the SB10 EAA reservoir, but most importantly, SEP is the link between Lake Okeechobee, the Everglades National Park, and Florida Bay. This is how we get water from the lake south. And it's not just about the reservoir, it's about the whole suite of projects that are included in SEP. This is about a $3 billion project. We are fast tracking as many of these components as we can, and the $200 million from the federal government and the over $400 million from the state this year is going to allow us to expedite progress on these projects. This is the project you're looking for. So how are we going to communicate to the public? Don't worry, you don't have to read this slide. How are we going to communicate to the public how we're expediting these projects and give you an opportunity to tell us whether we're expediting the projects that are most important to you or not? That process is part of the integrated delivery schedule. So I just put this snapshot so you kind of know what I was talking about, because integrated delivery schedule, like what's that mean? You may have seen this large placemat. It looks like a big spreadsheet, has all of the projects listed on one side, the timeline across the top, and when we're doing design work, construction, and operations of each of the projects. We did this through a very public process. We did a series of workshops, developed the integrated delivery schedule, and then we've updated it. We last updated it in the summer of 2018, and we know we need to do another update, because funding changes, and before we started getting indications that we were going to receive $200 million this year, we were most concerned that we needed to communicate to the public the delay that we were going to see in multiple projects because of the low funding this year, although that was assisted by the Congress, because we had about $65 million up to $124 million after the work plan from Congress this year, but that's still short of $200 million. And the IDS, when we had developed it, we looked at constraints for funding but we anticipated somewhere between 120 and 200 million each year. That wasn't happening over the last couple of years. But now we're hopeful that we'll be able to look at increased funding from both the state and the federal government. So what does that mean? It means we need to do an IDS update. And this is what we think we're looking at. We think that we're going to be able to keep a lot of things that are under construction on track. We think we're going to be able to continue construction on some of the projects that we were afraid we might have to slow construction on. We're going to be able to continue design efforts on projects that were scheduled for the integrated delivery schedule, and maybe even pull some of these projects to the left. These are the studies that we've been working on that we can complete and put forward to Congress for their authorization, and then look at scheduling those into the construction timeline. Some other projects that are also receiving a lot of funding from the federal government. So some of these are additional funding from both the state and the federal government that are above and beyond the 200 million. So you may have heard about the Tamiami Trail Next Steps Phase 2. This is the raising of another 6 miles of bridging along the Tamiami Trail that allows that water to flow south from the water conservation areas and into the park. The Department of Interior requested a grant from the Department of Transportation, and the state government added 43 million to the 60 million provided by the federal government. And so now we have full funding for that project. That project's going to be awarded this fall and is anticipated to be completed not later than 2023. So great news. There's a lot going on with Everglades restoration. It's a great time to be working on this stuff. We look forward to your participation also in an IDS workshop that we will be scheduling very soon, last week, at the South Florida Ecosystem Restoration Task Force meeting, which is the meeting of all the agencies that provide oversight to the work that the Corp and the South Florida Water Management District are doing on Everglades restoration. That meeting was last week, and they agreed to request from the task force funding and authority to be able to hold a public workshop, to be able to update this integrated delivery schedule and present it to the task force in October. So sometime late summer, early fall, we'll be hosting a workshop in order to present all of the information that we have about what this schedule looks like and receive your input so that we can make sure that our schedules reflect your priorities. That's the update that I have.
Very good. Thank you very much. So we may have time for a question or two. So why don't we take one? We'll start over here this time and come back over there real quick, though. Sherry.
Give her the microphone.
I was teaching at Broward College in the early 90s. And they were talking about Everglades restoration at that time. And so I went to the meeting and I asked, okay, how much of the original water flow will be going into the Everglades National Park? Or I didn't even say Everglades National Park, the Everglades. So I would like to ask you the same question. That, what is it now? And what is it proposed to be after you do the particular projects that you have scheduled?
So we've done a couple series on what we call the natural systems model. What did the natural system look like? And it's a little bit more challenging than it would seem. It would seem like that would be relatively easy to figure out. However, it's a little bit more challenging than it would initially seem. But we have done that. And so we think that the Everglades, and when I say the Everglades, I believe that the Everglades starts at Orlando and flows all the way south to Florida Bay. But we have a lot of stuff in between, right? And so we have to continue to rehydrate the Everglades sort of by component. So the most challenging part of the Everglades right now, and the part that's most starved for water, is what's south of Tamiami Trail. So Everglades National Park in Florida Bay. So looking at that demarcation line of the Tamiami Trail, Right now, we think that the natural system model indicates that somewhere between 1.5 million acre feet and 2.5 million acre feet was what the natural system model indicates was coming across that line. However, some of that is now developed on the eastern side. And so we think something closer to the lower end is what the system can handle without inducing flooding in those developed areas. What we're flowing across that line right now is somewhere between 500,000 acre feet and 750,000 acre feet, so 500 and 750,000 acre feet. What we're shooting for under SEP, when we have SEP complete, and the associated projects that also help manage the seepage, is looking at about 1.5 million acre feet. And so we think that's about right, at least for now, and then we can look at tweaking the system.
Right, quick answer, let's go over to Alex and then Marty.
Hi, Lieutenant Colonel Alex Gillen, Friends of the Everglades. Thank you.
Well, just shout it out. Get it out.
Thanks for being here, we need to go, and thank you for your service. I'm a little disappointed with your remark today about West Palm Beach being short of water supply. There's a legal doctrine that says that if businesses are competing for water against humans, then humans win. And so, can you tell me if West Palm Beach or anyone who draws water from the lake has ever not gotten water from the lake for human consumption? And can you also tell me if Sugar has ever not gotten water for the lake for their fields?
So it's a hard question for me to answer because that's not my authority. But from what I've heard from South Florida Water Management District and from what I've heard from our agencies about water supply, in the recent past, at least under LORS 08, I am not aware of any time that people have not received water. However, in the drought years, we have had well fields that have had a hard time producing the water and achieving the water pressure that is required to meet their safety requirements, and they've had to adjust and do other things.
Kind of like we have to do here when we get massive discharges of toxic acid.
Yes.
Marty, and we'll there, and then we'll go back to the.
Thank you, Colonel. A question for you. I've been told that the LOSUM manual is tied into the levy, and it will not be completed until 2022. What is the reason that that document is being held up by the completion of the levy? Could you enlighten me here, please?
Okay. Yes, so, two things. One is, when we wrote the current operation schedule, we set conditions of when would we look at a new schedule. This is to provide predictability for the public, to be able to make decisions about all kinds of things. And so we know that our water operations make significant impacts to people who use water. And so that's why we do it in a public process. So we set conditions of when we would look at a new manual. One of those was completion of repairs to the River Hoover Dike.
Why?
And then
Why? What is the bearing on completion of that and the document? The lake is going to be operated with the current LORS, and there'll be zero chance of a levee breach because we won't let that happen. So why is something as important as this manual being delayed by a red herring? And that's how I see it. Of course, you must know that I support Calusa, Waterkeeper, and their lawsuit over there, but that's neither here nor
Let her
there.
answer that.
And so the second condition was having additional infrastructure that would allow us additional places to put water. And the reason that the operation schedule is tied to those two things is because we do see very significant impacts to the River Hoover Dike levee at levels of water starting above 16 feet. And so the reason that that's important helps us manage the risk when we have events like this. And so when we're here, we're not thinking about what are we gonna do with the water when it's here. We're thinking about what are we gonna do if we get this kind of event. And so we're thinking at this point, what are we gonna do if we get this kind of an event? And where on these numbers do we have to start releasing massive amounts of water? Because when this water starts coming in and it gets above 16 feet, we start to see that levee erode. And
That's
so,
not gonna happen. You haven't let it happen so far. It's not going to happen in the next 3 years. I do not see your operational lines here as having anything to do with the construction of an operational manual. You are well aware of what projects you have going forward and all of those things. I just can't wrap my head around that the dike has to be done because there's some sort of a contrived danger that is greater than what we have been experiencing. I don't see how the construction of a book has any effect on this until it itself is operational. So, thank you for your
Okay,
time. I really mean,
Maybe
thank
there
you.
can be some more in-depth.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm
Some
happy
other
to
time,
talk
we'll
to
get into this more.
about it more. But my primary concern is that when I have lake levels in this range, I am not willing to risk 2,800 people's lives.
Nobody in this room is, and nobody is suggesting that you do. I'm suggesting that the operation under Moore's is not going to endanger anyone any more during the next 3 years than it has in the last 20.
Under Lours, it won't, because I start dumping water here
We did that.
on you,
Yes, we did
right?
that.
So I don't have to wait for Herbert Hoover Dike construction to complete to keep Lours. But you don't want me to do that. And so in order to understand how much water can I release when, there's a lot of analysis that goes into that. Because of all these spaghetti lines.
That's 30 years.
But then part of that analysis has to be the Herbert Hoover dike or the construction.
And how much we can, because when the dike is complete, I'm not gonna be worried about the dike eroding at 16 feet. But I might be worried about it at 17. But that's a whole foot. That's a big difference in an operation schedule. That's 467,000 acre feet that I can hold in the lake and not send to the St. Lucie River.
Okay, let's, thank you for the good questions, and let's move on. We got you, and then back and back. Real quick, though, real quick.
You had a year-by-year table of the inflows and outflows from the lake. 3 of those years, the outflows to the south were over 1 million acre feet. Could you not do that every year?
The reason that we could do that in those years is because very little rain fell south of Lake Okeechobee. All of the rain in those years fell north of Lake Okeechobee. So we had a lot of rainfall north of Lake Okeechobee, flowing into Lake Okeechobee. But south of the lake, it was very dry. So we could flow water south because there was capacity, the ground was absorbing it, and the canals were not already dealing with rainfall that was flooding into those canals. In years like that, we can absolutely do it. In some other years where the rainfall is more well distributed, or the rainfall falls a lot on the lake and south of the lake, we have the opposite problem. And then it's that times that I need more storage areas, and it would be under those types of conditions that the EAA reservoir would be particularly important.
We go back to here, there, and then back to you. Wait, dude, just hang on. Go ahead, sir. Yes.
Yes, the EAA reservoir. When do we start, when do we finish, and is it fully funded?
Good question. Yeah.
It is not fully funded. Work on it has already started, so the Corps has already started work on design of the EAA reservoir, and the South Florida Water Management District has already started some work and some design work on other components associated with that. The schedule that we're looking at right now is about 8 years. That is if funding is consistent and meets the capability. So what does that mean? That means If we get enough funding to actually meet the items on the schedule throughout those 8 years, that's about what we think is reasonable.
I thought that the federal government and the state had agreed to fund it fully.
I am not aware of an appropriation agreement that actually meets that.
There is
I
funding.
understand the appropriations committee, and I understand that process. But the project was signed by the governor, the president of the United States, approved by Congress, so I assume that funding will follow. Am I being naive?
I don't want to say that, but they are separate processes. So the authorization authorizes us to work on the project. It doesn't necessarily guarantee funding for us to complete the project on any given schedule. It does indicate that funding will be supported, but at what level in order to support what timeline is less clear, and that's a decision made then by the
That
appropriators.
happens every year.
Sure, isn't it correct, it's only passed the House, it's not going to the Senate, and it's not going to bill, right?
We're going to, yes, we're going to Lisa, Becky, Newton, and then
My
Blair,
name is
and then we
Lisa
got.
Beagle, I'm with Surfrider Foundation, but more importantly, I'm a mom. I will pick up the Title 90, I have a question, it might not be
Louder, please.
not appropriate for you, but I'm curious. So, when you go to, these tables, it starts to make sense for me, and I'm starting to understand your role. I'm new to the table. When you get that 15, 16 feet, and you need to now start dumping on us, who is responsible for telling me and my family that microcystin is on its way, that there are going to be algae blooms coming into our area, and that my children are now going to be at risk? What's the plan? How do you warn me? How do you tell me maybe it's time to take my family north? What is the process? And if it's not you that does that, who does?
Good question.
Great question. So I told Erica on the drive here that this was gonna be the hardest question I got today. Because it's hard. It's hard for us because our job is to manage the flow of the water, the quality of the water, and the potential human health impacts. We're not the experts on, and we really have to rely on other agencies to help us. The bad news is the agencies have been doing a terrible job of this for the past couple of years. The better news is that we're getting a little bit better about it. So the Florida DEP, the Florida Department of Health, the Corps of Engineers, and others have really been working hard on how do we do this better. We still haven't gotten it right. However, the DEP does have, and I hate to say like, oh, we have a website, and so you can go there and look at it, because I get it, that's not enough. And we're trying to figure out how do we do things that are more informative and transparent and available to the public. We need your help with that, because we don't know how you consume information. And the agencies consume information much differently than the general public. Likewise, some of the agencies have concerns, including ours, that we don't want to scare the public on areas that we just lack some information. We also don't want to not give you enough information to make prudent decisions. So we are struggling with this. What we are doing right now is the Department of Health has provided a format for signs that we are going to, and the state is going to put up at locations where algae has been spotted, where we've seen algae, even ahead of testing. So that there's two kinds of signage that's going up. And this is a state program, so I'm talking way out of my lane here, but I think it's important for you to have this information. And so this is something you really need to reach back out to Department of Health and Department of Environmental Protection, who have the lead on this, but this is how they've told us what we're gonna do as part of their program. And so they're providing the signage for us, and it's distributed by county. And so we pick up the signs from the county, and then we post those at all of our public access points where we've seen algae. Then Department of Environmental Protection will come out and they will test the water. But that testing takes about 7 days to come back from the labs and actually give us the toxicology of that. At that time, if the samples indicate that there is toxins in the water, then another sign gets added. So the first sign is a yellow sign that says, hey, algae's been spotted, you should probably think about not going in the water. And then a red sign if toxins have been tested and found in that water. A red sign goes up that says, and there's toxins here, so we really, really think you ought to stay out of the water. I can't remember exactly what the signs say. They're a little bit more government sounding. And so that's the plan. What we, the Corps, are also doing is that we always put in a press release when we are going to release water. If there is algae at our structure, when we are going to release water, we are including that in our press release. It will be very generic. Again, because we're not the agency that can make the determination on the quality of the water or the health impacts. So it's a little bit challenging for us, and we don't want to usurp the authorities of other agencies. So it'll be generic, but we are including it.
Good answer. Let's go to Blair, and then we've got two in the back, and then we got to really wrap this up. So please be quick, okay? Let's go.
The question, I was encouraged by your comments regarding the flexibility to lower the lake to expand the amount of storage. We right now have unbelievably clear, healthy water because of that. But then I read in the past that you had made the comment that lowering the lake was to accommodate the submerged aquatic vegetation in Lake Okeechobee and would not happen in the future. So was the flexibility to store more water to prevent the discharges, or was it to help the aquatic vegetation in Lake Okeechobee?
It was both. And one of the reasons that we were able to do that is because we had a series of conditions over the past several years where we had extremely high lake levels and never had an opportunity to bring the lake back down to a more natural fluctuating level. So that's what gave us the ability to release that water this year.
Can we plan for next year to go to 11 or to 10.5 feet?
So right now, what we are working on is what does operations look like in this interim while we are undertaking the low sound schedule. So the low sound schedule is going to fully evaluate both the high end and the low end of the lake. We are not waiting until that effort is complete. We are doing everything that we can within our authority right now to consider alternative ways to distribute the timing of water. Because again, I don't know how much water is going to fall from the sky. And so I have to be prudent in those decisions. And so as we look at that, we are absolutely considering what's best for all of the ecological environments, including both coasts. And so we are absolutely looking at that. Whether 11 feet is the right number or whether 12 feet is okay, that's some of what we're talking about. And a lot really depends on how much water we're getting.
Okay, a couple more, honestly, real quick, not comments, but questions, go.
Okay. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel, for always bringing the facts. One number I want to just emphasize, there's two numbers.
Nice and loud.
One number I want to emphasize, and two numbers actually. That's when you were talking about the amount of water that's going to go under the Tamiami Trail today and what we plan after 7. And the difference between those two numbers. Now, I know it's somewhere between 400 and 800,000 acre feet. And that's correct?
Yeah, she said about 500,000 acre feet
yes.
now and going
Well,
to a million.
sometimes you hear the district is 378,000, but I'll take the 800,000. 800,000 acre feet is 1.5 feet off the lake a year, new. That's all the new water that's going to go off that lake after all this is done. It's so important to understand, when you talk about move the water south, there's absolutely no plans by the Everglades National Park to accept more than what's equivalent to 18 inches off the lake, which can come into the lake in 2 weeks, 3 weeks during the storm. We are not going to move a lot of water south. We're going to move more water south. But the Everglades never handled the volumes of water that we're getting into the lake today. And the Everglades are not going to handle it after all this is done. They're going to get 1.5 foot off the lake. Mind you, it's raining in the WCAs. It might not get that much off the lake.
What's the question? What's the
The
question?
question is, I just want you, she made that statement and she's 100% right. So I want everyone to understand, when you say move the water south through the system, you're talking about 18 inches a year.
All right, great. All right, moving on. We got one more and one more up here, and that's it. Go ahead,
Thanks.
Becky Harris.
Yeah, thank you for coming and doing this and listening to us, and thank you for managing the lake a little differently this year. My question was along the line of Blair's. I know, looking out my backyard, I think everybody can see that the water quality is a lot different. I know I sent you the reports that come from Mark's group that show the difference between the water last year and this year, and I know we've all been accused of having bad septic tanks, basin runoff. I think the city of Stewart, Martin County has done some great things. So back to Blair's question, when I hear that you guys aren't gonna do the same thing next year, I sure as hell hope you do, because it's making a difference in our water quality.
I don't think she said they
So what I'd
were.
offer with that is what's making a difference is we're not releasing water from the lake.
Right?
Yeah.
So help me, help my water managers, 2 of whom are sitting in the back of the room today, actually. Help me help them by not worrying so much about what the lake level is. Let us worry about that. Just keep telling us to not release water to you, because that's what's important, right? So let us figure out how to
Zero
not release
discharge.
water to you,
Zero.
which
Zero.
might not mean 11 feet, because I might be able to not release water, but keep the lake at 12.5.
0.
And as I have more construction projects that give me more flexibility, I can keep the lake in a much tighter band. My goal is to keep that lake between about 12 and 15.5 all the time. And the more construction projects that I have that allow me to distribute water and affect that timing of when I can move water to different places, lets me both keep the lake in an ideal range for all of the stakeholders, as well as not release water to the safest.
Thank you. Let's end on that. Thank you. I'm sure she'll be around a little bit to answer some more
Mark?
specific questions and things.
15 seconds.
All
15
right.
seconds.
15
First, Lieutenant Colonel, thank you for your tour of duty of 4.5 years. The